night's big interview. It's been a hectic 7 days for former President Donald Trump, who, of course, thank God, survived an assassination attempt last weekend and went on to headline the Republican convention, naming J.D. Vance as his vice presidential nominee. Meanwhile, many Democrats are calling for President Joe Biden to stand aside and allow someone else to take on Trump in the presidential election later this year. Here to discuss these very significant events, I'm pleased to welcome Carla Sands, a former economic advisor to Trump, who was ambassador to Denmark during his presidency. Former Ambassador Sands, thank you very much for joining us. How was the Republican convention? The mood there just seems in total stark contrast, like night and day, to the Democrats falling apart, arguing with each other about whether or not to keep their nominee, whereas the Republicans seem totally united right now.
Darren, it's absolutely true. I've been attending Republican conventions since 2000, and this was the best one I've attended by far. It was phenomenal, filled with speakers that really speak to different members of our society here in the United States, from working people to people who have lost their loved ones in wars, in the disastrous withdrawal from Afghanistan that Joe Biden and his administration conducted just a few years ago. It was uplifting. It was promising the American dream, the hope of the American dream to every American. And that's why J.D. Vance is a great vice president candidate, because he comes from the wrong side of the tracks, from a drug-addicted mother raised by his grandmother, a very tough lady, and he brought himself up by his own hard work and bootstraps, attending finally Yale Law School and writing a bestseller, Hillbilly Elegy. I recommend it to your viewers.
Yes, the film's great as well, actually. But Carla, you have a unique insight alongside your colleagues in the sort of ambassadorial part of the Trump administration, but an insight into Europe. And I know you're very passionate about things like energy policy, for example, and being energy independent. And, of course, in the fact that under President Trump, there were certainly fewer conflicts going on in the world. What would the benefits, do you think, to Europe be of a President Trump return to the White House?
Well, so that's a great question, Darren. Number one, I think that his promise to close our border to the illegal immigrants coming in is a great example to our European allies, who we want to have strong societies. And really, the people from the UK deserve to have the opportunity and safety in their neighborhoods and in the good jobs, rather than people coming in illegally, not through normal immigration channels. That's first. It drains the public coffers. But second, his example of leading peace through strength with a strong nation. We want every nation state that's our ally to be strong. We want your prime minister to be focused on making UK great. And toward the energy point, we want our allies to be energy secure. And Europe largely is not, because of very bad energy policy that's been in place for decades now. Now you have an even more leftist government coming into power in the UK. And I really worry. I mean, UK could be fracking, which is so clean. It's actually a green thing to do because it's renewable, it's natural. And in the Western countries, we do harvesting of energy cleaner than anywhere else in the world.
Yeah, but just before I go to Benjamin Butterworth, who won't be quite as pleasant as I am, Carla, I regretfully say. But Carla, I wonder who would be, if I can ask this question, who would be your least favoured, shall we say, pick on the Democrat side to replace President Biden? Who do you think would be the best challenger to Trump?
Well, Darren, you know, President Biden was actually elected in the primary democratically by the voters. So for these party honchos, these backroom, smoke-filled room meetings to try to push out the democratically nominated candidate of the other major party in the United States is the least democratic thing I could even think of. He is the candidate. If they push him out, it is undemocratic. It is top-down machine politics. But that's what we see from the purported party of democracy.
Carla, if they did push him out, who would be the candidate that the Republican Party would fear the most?
I don't think it's a matter of fearing another candidate. We have the best candidate in my lifetime running for president with the best candidate for VP in my lifetime running for the vice president. We've seen the consequences of having bad leadership and a bad administration in Washington, with wars around the world, loss of American life, open borders, fentanyl crisis, killing more young Americans than died in World War II.
Terrible.
We've also seen, yes, and we've seen what happens under strong American leadership: no new foreign wars, secure border, the Abraham Accords, bringing peace to the Middle East, and so many other important efforts, even the North Korea diplomatic relationship. There was a lot of progress made under President Trump, but the best progress was that the working people actually had their incomes go up the most in my lifetime, including women's employment and all of the minorities in America, whether it's Asians, Hispanics, Blacks, people from other backgrounds. They all did better, and the average American family had about $8,000 more in their pockets every year than under the Biden administration.
I mean, Benjamin Butterworth, even you must be thinking, come on, after hearing all that, the average American would be a lot better off under Trump.
No, because a lot of those facts are highly dubious. It's questionable that they're not facts at all. What I'd say to you, though, as someone who obviously knows foreign relations extremely well, having been the ambassador in Denmark, is that I think European capitals are terrified of a Trump return because of what he and his new pick as deputy, as vice president, have said about Ukraine. And I think a lot of European governments fear that this will be a gift to Russia if Trump is re-elected.
Well, Benjamin, unfortunately for you, facts are facts. They're not ideas, they're facts, and you can't argue with facts.
The biggest jobs growth of any president in history is the current one, Joe Biden. Black unemployment was lower under Joe Biden than it was under Donald Trump. So there's two things that you got wrong.
Let's deal with the question I asked. Let's just recall, if you'll let me answer the question. First of all, black employment was better under President Trump until we had the pandemic that was released out of China, if you'll recall. And that's why that employment changed. Black employment is not doing well right now in the United States. Regarding Ukraine, no matter how much money that the EU countries or the U.S. shovels over there, it is not going to change the outcome. Ukraine is out of young fighting age men. The average age of the soldiers over there is about 45 years old. They are just going into the wood chipper of the Russian military might. There's many more men, fighting age men from Russia than from Ukraine. And we are not sending young American men and women over to Ukraine.
Nobody is saying that American troops should be in Ukraine.
President Trump, well, some in the EU have suggested NATO troops. President Trump will find a way to bring peace within this conflict. But I'll just say you misunderstand the moment. And people can be dogmatic about their ideas, but facts are facts, and they're tough things. America and the world did better under President Trump, and he will push for free and fair trade on a level playing field.
I'm sorry, can I just say, I think the way that you play in to Russian talking points and think that we should give up to a dangerous dictator that would go so much further than Ukraine, I think the idea you represented the US abroad is a disgrace, and you let down so many Americans and so many Ukrainians, and thank God Britain is not on the same path as you and Trump.
Yeah, I don't think Americans would agree, Ben.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Let's let Carla defend her position.
Well, I mean, your rhetoric is hot. Your rhetoric is hostile.
It always is, Carla.
Oh, I see. Well, you know, the point is we want our allies to be strong. We want them to be wealthy. Wealthy, strong countries can take care of their environment and make sure that it's clean, the water, the air, that people are actually not dying in their homes, which tens of thousands of UK citizens have died because of coal, because of the bad energy policy in the UK. I think Prime Minister needs to look after the people of the UK and then pay the fair share to the NATO defense. The world is not getting safer. It's getting more dangerous, and our NATO allies need to do more.
I agree.
It's not just buying equipment, it's training soldiers, it's recruiting more young soldiers, and then it's getting them trained on the equipment. There are many shortcomings, as you know. Although we know UK is a great ally, there's so much more to do.
Well, I agree. But Carla, just finally, and just briefly, I wonder, how was President Trump after the assassination? Because purely psychologically, you know, that must really, really put something over a person. You know, that the terrifying aspect of what could have amounted, well, what literally did amount to a head turn, saving his life.
Darren, it's so true. It's a miracle that President Trump is alive and that we weren't having a funeral instead of a Republican National Convention. I feel so blessed that he's living, and I think Americans are still processing the fact that their leader on the, more than half the voters now support this man, was almost killed. Remember, the left, the Democrats on the left have tried to bankrupt him, put him in prison for over 700 years, strip him of his company, and then this assassination attempt, along with so many lawsuits on him and his family. This man has been attacked by the left and the Democrats since 2015, after being a hero in American business and in communities around the country. It's a miracle. I see a changed man. I see that he has been given a new lease on life, and it seems like his countenance has changed, and there's a purpose to him. He had a purpose before, but his purpose seems even stronger today than it was before.
All right, former Ambassador Sands, thank you very much for your company there and for enduring Benjamin Butterworth.